according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, in April of 1610, the English explorer Henry Hudson embarked, quote, from London in the 55-ton vessel Discovery. His destination? The New World. Hudson's expedition was cursed with failure, folly, mutiny, and finally, a midwinter marooning that culminated in the deaths of Hudson and his entire family. Yet, quote, his discoveries formed the basis for the Dutch colonialization of the Hudson River, end quote. Thanks to the information Hudson gave his life to discover, the Dutch established the colony of New Amsterdam. In the long run, though his mark on history was erased in all but name, Hudson's death gave life to America's quintessential neighborhood, the borough of Lower Manhattan. Lower Manhattan, home to the first Capitol building of the U.S. government under the Constitution, the place where the Bill of Rights was introduced in First Congress, Federal Hall. Lower Manhattan, home to Wall Street, the Statue of Liberty, and Greenwich Village. It's where the atomic bombs used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were concocted. It's where the World Trade Center buildings, also known as the Twin Towers, once stood and where Trump Tower stands today. DC may represent the national government's public face, but make no mistake. The real ghost in the American machine is what silently courses through the digital networks and information veins of Wall Street and Lower Manhattan. Before the Russian complication, Snake was scheduled to disembark as the Discovery passes under the rendezvous point, the Verrazano Bridge.
I'll be waiting just past the Verrazano Bridge. You need to be off that ship by then.
Now, the Verrazano Bridge sits at a point known as the Narrows. The Narrows are a tidal strait linking together Upper and Lower New York Bay, while also serving as a natural gateway of sorts into New York Harbor. Like the Hudson River, the bridge is named after an early non-English colonial explorer, Giovanni de Verrazano. So what's the point? This tanker not only shares the name of the Hudson's exploratory vessel, Snake's discovery is traveling down the exact same water route as the original Hudson, just in the reverse direction. Now, before I get into what this inversion of Hudson's route might represent, I think Snake and Olga have been left to their own devices for long enough.
I've been with the unit since I was born. I grew up on the battlefield. Conflict and victory were my parents.
From a game design perspective, the Olga Battle works as a training exercise of sorts. It requires, becoming comfortable with popping in and out of first person to aim and third person to reposition on the fly. Olga throws grenades if you stay in one place for too long too, so you'll need to be fast to avoid the grenade's area of effect.
Take this!
To recap, thinking on your feet, shooting accurately, and moving quickly, yet decisively, if you can put all three together fluidly, even under fire, you've got this boss fight in the bag, provided you can adapt once Olga pulls some improvisational moves of her own. Once Olga's finally put to sleep, Snake takes her USP as a memento, showing weapons, like information, can also exhibit dual use. Before you can go back inside though, you're ambushed out of nowhere by a US Army autonomous reconnaissance drone. The unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, known as the Sikorsky Cypher, comes from a time before the existence of drones was public knowledge. What's unsettling and bizarre isn't just that it looks like a UFO, or that it's an autonomous machine, or even that it seems to snap a picture of Snake, it's that the machine is here at all. Because like I said, the Ray Project is a highly guarded secret under exclusive Marine Corps jurisdiction. There's no conceivable reason why the Army would be involved, nor for that matter, why they've sent a recon drone, which clearly lacks an ability to surveil what's concealed below deck in the ship's holds. The only possible explanation is that it's you and not Ray that this cipher unit was sent to obtain photographic evidence of. But how did the army know you'd be here, and what purpose would proof of your presence here serve them? What does it have to do with the fact that, as Otacon now reveals, the original intel on this tanker came from someone claiming to be Otacon's long-lost stepsister?
We didn't dig up this info about the new Metal Gear on our own. Not like usual.
How did you find out then?
It was a tip. An anonymous tip.
Anonymous? You've never trusted those. Why would you start now?
I have a younger sister, a stepsister. We have different parents. I only knew her for 2 years.
You've never mentioned her before. So?
The sender of the tip was EE.
EE?
Her name is Emma, but I always call her EE.
Fortunately, there's at least one question from your growing list that gets an answer. Thanks to a well-timed photo that Snake snapped of the hijacker's leader at the mission's onset, Otacon's managed to match that face with a name. It's Sergei Gerlukovich. Gerlukovich, he was the man supplying Foxhound with much of its gear and heavier firepower behind the scenes of the Shadow Moses incident. Liquid hoped to combine forces with Sergei and his unit of ex-Soviet Special Forces operators and to create his own version of Big Boss's Outer Heaven. But with Liquid dead and the sons of Big Boss no more, it seems Sergei has maintained ties with Ocelot, hoping to finally get his hands on a real Metal Gear like Ray once and for all. That means it's looking likely that hijacking Ray is Gerlukovich's primary objective, and that Ocelot is yet again the instigator behind the scenes. So Otacon was wrong when he said tonight wouldn't be a reprise of Shadow Moses. You feel a nostalgic pang of dread, not from American history, but now from the series of history, as Snake yet again descends into the depths of this island-like fortress stronghold to prevent the Metal Gear prototype from falling into terrorist hands. And that sense of deja vu gets stronger the closer you get to the holds. Not only do you run into what at first looks like Vulcan Raven's silhouette, which ends up only being a toy version of the giant and shaman, to make it into the lowest reaches of the tanker, you're forced to disarm Ocelot's signature calling card, tripwires rigged with C4.
Right. Touch that wire, and the C4 will blow up along with the old man.
Is the bastard just messing with your mind, or do the C4 traps foreshadow a terrorist plot to destroy the ship? Unfortunately, there's only one real way to find out: descending into the belly of the whale yourself. The level design thus far has been vertically aligned, but here the map opens up with long, horizontally aligned hallways. This gives a claustrophobic sense of being bottlenecked, and this feeling of having nowhere to hide is only heightened once Snake is confronted by a squad of the enemy, in yet another eerie echo of events from Shadow Moses. This encounter triggers a mini-boss fight that again serves as a kind of training exercise. Even in this straightforward firefight, the environment can be used to your advantage. The walls have pipes running along them full of boiling steam which can be used to scald the enemy if punctured. The lights, too, can be shot out, while the USP's flashlight can blind enemies if they go in to rush you. The purpose of this skirmish, gameplay-wise, is to impart a basic principle. Semi-auto gunplay in MGS2 will not be like that of MGS1. The USP, as with the M9, has a different effect depending on where your shots connect. If you try blind firing, Shadow Moses style, your shots will only wound the enemy in their arms or torso. Sure, they'll drop if you do this enough times, but that's an extremely ineffective way to defend yourself and a very effective way to drain your ammo. There is a regenerating ammo box behind you, but it only supplies a handful of rounds per refill, and in the time you'll spend running back and forth from the resupply to cover, wasting most of your shots on sloppy imprecision, the enemy will have the necessary time and numbers to attack as a group and quickly overwhelm you. On the other hand, by precision aiming in first person, you maximize each round's effectiveness through deadly accurate headshots, if you can manage to land them. You won't have all day to line up your sights from cover though before the enemy tosses a grenade. Like with Olga, winning requires coordination between shooting, moving, and thinking on your feet. Once the attack team is eliminated, Snake crosses the final threshold into the inner sanctum. But the camera lingers in the hallway behind him to show one of the squad members who evaded detection emerge from hiding and lock the door behind you. The soldier's sense of triumph is short-lived, however, once Ocelot shows up to promptly shoot him in the face. Does this mean Ocelot's secretly on your side? Why in the world is he double-crossing Gerlukovich's men now, and instead of after the hijacking is complete. Just what the hell is he really after? It's impossible to say at this point. Snake, oblivious to this stunning twist, proceeds to infiltrate the holds housing his main objective. What he finds inside is a large theater or cave-like chamber. Below you, Marines congregate in formation as they dutifully watch giant monitors displaying a live stream of their commandant's speech. What follows is a rather unique sequence which synthesizes together story and gameplay in an unexpected way, while also paying homage to the famous philosophical allegory of Plato's cave. The idea of Plato's allegory of the cave is that, in essence, we are limited by our senses, that reality is mediated by perception. As the Marines are as distracted by the speech as the dweller of Plato's famous cave of illusions, it provides you, as a metaphor for the truth lurking outside perception, a perfect opportunity to sneak past the first two such chambers and into the third, where Ray and the Commandant are located. Throughout this infiltration, and even during the Ray photoshoot itself, the risk of discovery remains surprisingly low. This lets you divide your attention between the task at hand and the speech's content, effectively serving both functions of a gameplay section and cutscene in one. But this sequence is no less intriguing thematically as it is mechanically. It's more than a little ironic that, at the same time Snake is working to expose Ray's existence to the world as a horrific nightmare weapon, Commander Dolph is calmly and rationally orating on the topic of what makes Ray such a crucial weapon of defense and worthy instrument of peace.
This weapon will render all other Metal Gears obsolete. Nations building up their own Metal Gear force will think twice about their nuclear strategy in the light of the military dominance spelled out by Ray.
These simultaneous streams of information are taking place with no attempt by the game itself to filter or contextualize one over the other. Which representation of Ray is the truth and which is purely artificial? Who is the terrorist and who the hero? As you move through the giant theaters with one and then two silver screens upon which representations of the speech are projected, it feels as though you're also moving closer to the truth of this question. Again, much like the subject of Plato's famous cave, who slowly and painfully is dragged outside to learn what he and everyone else took to be reality was in fact shadow illusions cast by the sunlight all along. But even once you reach Ray and the Commandant in the flesh, you discover MGS2 rejects the kernel of Plato's cave analogy. There is no pure truth to be found, no sun unmediated by perception, only shadows of interpretation. Even the pictures that Snake snaps of the giant amphibious machine don't tell how to interpret them. That context is supplied, hijacked even, by philanthropy, whereas the context for the Marines is supplied by Commander Dolph and his speech. Truth, then, comes not from the thing itself, but from whatever context surrounds and is imposed upon it. Once you've snapped the correct shots for Otacon and uploaded them into the app he remote installed on the Marine network, you're shown yet another version of reality that's indistinguishable from truth or fiction. A version of reality framed and contextualized not by Snake's camera lens or the game's, but by that of the TV cameraman's for the entire ship to see. A version of reality presented, or should I say performed, by Revolver Ocelot himself.
Excellent speech, my friend.
Who the?
Gift of the silver tongue. They say it's the mark of a good officer. And of a liar.
In the vacuum of silence marking the end of the speech, a slow clap draws every eye in the room. Then, emerging from behind Ray's legs, Ocelot announces his presence by following Commander Dolph's stirring speech with one of his own.
Americans are too in love with the sound of their own voice to speak the truth.
Ocelot's opening remarks frame Dolph as a liar and himself as a teller of harsh truths, yet he refers to Dolph as friend when it's obvious they've never met. He says excellent speeches delivered with silver tongues are usually full of lies, yet he says this, ironically, as a speech. It's the classic logical paradox. If the statement is true, it renders itself false. Orwell might have called it doublethink at its purest. The speech is a smokescreen. It's a trap, a ruse, under the premise of sincerity, and as a parody of the so-called Socratic method of debate. From these incendiary remarks and their theatrical delivery, it's clear what Ocelot's really after is the full attention of everyone in the room. Moments later, we learn why. Thanks to this little ruse, Sergei Glukovich himself, backed by a handful of elites, get the drop on Dolph from behind and take the commander hostage. We've just seen firsthand how information can be wielded as a weapon of mass distraction. Snake can only look on in silent horror as Ocelot steps into full view of the camera, much like an actor walking on stage from the wings behind a curtain. Dutifully performing tonight's role of the villain, Ocelot slowly and deliberately lifts his right hand high above his head to give everyone in the audience a good look at what it holds.
This ship now carries enough Simtex on its key structural points to blow it out of the water at the touch of this button.
Ocelot, projecting his voice properly, just like they teach in Theater Class 101, declares this detonator will trigger C4 strategically placed all across the ship and kill everyone if anyone tries to stop him or his friends from doing, well, whatever the hell they want. Now, the Marines mirror Snake's affect of stunned paralysis as Glukovich's men drop from the ceiling and begin the process of freeing Ray from its restraints. This is it, they're really doing it. Ray is about to be hijacked by terrorists and there's nothing Snake or anyone else can do but watch. But this liberation effort takes time. As the central players up on the podium are kept waiting, the tense standoff with its guns pointed in every direction resembles one of those spaghetti westerns Ocelot loves so much, almost as though fiction and reality have merged and blended before our very eyes. Dolph tries to break this tension the old-fashioned way with a little conversation. He asks Glukovich, whose sidearm is less than gently pressed into his temple, what they hope to accomplish by stealing Ray. This, it turns out, isn't the best question or the best person to ask it.
I was raised in Snezinsk, formerly known as Chelyabinsk 70, the nuclear research outpost.
What are you talking about?
After the Cold War ended, my home was bought out by the Americans.
Is there a point to this sad story?
Now you would understand. Land, friends, dignity, all sold to the highest bidder, the United States of America.
In a vengeful outburst, Glukovich exclaims that America has been screwing him and his homeland over for years with their greedy and exploitative ways. Ray, he declares, will net their movement near unlimited stacks of cash, thereby funding the rebirth and rise of a new Mother Russia. In his eyes, American brand capitalism and its many foot soldiers represent the true terrorists. Much like Snake, he sees himself and his cause as embodying truth and justice. But then, almost conversationally, as if to show firsthand how easily lies can resemble truth, Ocelot chimes in,
What do you intend to do?
Russia will rise again. And Ray is the key.
I regret to inform you that I have no intention of selling Metal Gear. As I said, I came to take it back.
Glukovich's sense of truth, like a chemical reaction turning a substance from solid to liquid, begins changing from truth to fiction. The man he believed to be a heroic ally was a traitor all along. It's as though an actor amongst an ensemble cast in mid-performance suddenly decided to veer off script and begin rewriting the play out loud. Everyone in the room, Sergei included, are frozen in place by Ocelot's words, utterly confused. Things begin moving faster and more dizzying than the swiveling cylinder of a gunslinger's revolver. With these words, Ocelot has effectively turned the entire situation on its head by betraying his own comrades right when they need him most.
I was never in your employ, Glukovich.
Now the Russians are as much his prisoners as the Marines, but it takes them time to grasp this shocking turn of events. For now, they also become members of Ocelot's captive audience. Sergei, too, seems too shocked to comprehend Ocelot's betrayal at first, but soon enough, that bewilderment curdles into rage. And in that rage, Sergei becomes blind. What Glukovich can't quite see is that Ocelot has now begun actively to provoke his anger.
No hard feelings, Colonel.
His mistake is assuming one ruse has not simply given way to another, that shadow has given way to sunlight. While making threats against Sergei's daughter Olga, mocking his intelligence, and declaring that Mother Russia can rot, Ocelot craftily turns his back on his former partner, clearly yet subtly inviting him to make a move. The twists and turns from out of nowhere to this already high-intensity standoff have rendered Sergei too disoriented to recognize this poisoned bait for what it is. Overcome with emotion and fury, Sergei throws Dolph towards Ocelot and moves to fire on his betrayer. Ocelot, of course, is ready for exactly this. In fact, it's what he wants. What happens next can only be depicted in slow motion. Ocelot throws off his coat, perhaps the same worn by all members of Foxhound as a tribute to Big Boss, to symbolize his switching of sides. As this memento from yesterday ruffles through the air, Ocelot fills it with holes, and both Sergei and Dolph along with it. The two men, who only moments ago represented polar ideological extremes, share in identical deaths. As Sergei falls to the floor while calling Ocelot a traitorous dog, it causes his men to snap out of their confusion, but it's already too late. The second revolver, concealed behind his back, is loosed from its holster to fill the air with its awful song. In an instant, Ocelot's fire cuts a 360-degree arc, dropping all of the Russians surrounding him with the speed, flash, and intensity of a lightning bolt. Before anyone can react, Ocelot moves from holstering his revolver to retrieving the detonator from his back waist. In a fluid, if not liquid, motion, he displays it again for the entire room and beyond before declaring, "You may yet make it to shore if you swim for your life." Then he presses the button. What ensues is nothing short of total chaos. All across the lower holds, explosions send Marines flying while water begins to seep in and flood the ship. A few try to land shots on Ocelot, but they're too far away or something. The bullets seem to curve around him like magic. It's in this disarray Snake finally feels it's safe, for lack of a better word, to make his move. Rushing forward through the already waist-high water, Snake confronts Ocelot with a shout. Everything so far in MGS2 has been building to this confrontational moment in one way or another.
Ocelot!
But instead of reacting to Snake with the same theatrical bravado as before, Ocelot, again, revolves. He begins acting strangely, very strangely. Then, in one of the most iconic and bizarre moments in video game history, Ocelot's persona transforms, right before our very eyes, into that of Liquid Snake. It seems no identity or property or truth is really absolute when Ocelot's concerned. Remember when Cyborg Ninja sliced off Ocelot's hand back on Shadow Moses? Well, it seems Ocelot found a willing donor in Liquid's corpse. Ocelot transplanted Liquid's arm onto his own body, but apparently this brought more than he bargained for along for the ride. As insane as it sounds, it seems Liquid Snake's phantom lives on beyond death inside Ocelot's arm. Being confronted by Snake seems to have awakened the supernatural presence, who now taunts you like the good old days from inside Ocelot's body and mind.
Ouch! Get out of my mind, Liquid!
Liquid begins to lord the success of his psychic transplant over you. He implies that Snake, as a clone of Big Boss, was intentionally created with a short shelf life. While Snake will be dead in a matter of a few years, or so the ghost of your big brother implies, Liquid declares himself to have already transcended the whole life and death thing by taking possession of this arm. And what do you know, still an asshole even as a phantom limb. Before Snake can really process the batshit insanity of this information, the man who can now only be called Liquid Ocelot hops into Ray, starts it up, and uses its laser to cut a hole in the already rapidly disintegrating hull of the tanker. Snake is thrown beneath the waves. For a moment his head breaks above the choppy water, but he scarcely has time to draw a breath before Ray dives, creating a mammoth-sized wave in its wake, which seems to subsume Snake entirely. Snake, it seems, has met his end, whereas Metal Gear Solid 2 is only just beginning.
Yes, at the location we discussed. Yes, I have photographic evidence of Snake on the scene. The cipher was most useful. I look forward to tomorrow morning's newsflash. I would say the Marine Corps' plans are on indefinite hold. Yes, of course, Mr. President.